Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my podcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And this is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. And Tom, let's fire up the hot stove a little bit.
You're fired up today already.
I am. I want to talk about this. There's been a lot of a current that's sort of traveled around the NHL about the fact that if Chris Kreider is going to be traded, that the Bruins are going to come out big and make an offer for him. They feel like he's a good fit. He can play in their top six. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, he's got a scoring touch, and he's from the Massachusetts area, which is all good. Your ties to the Rangers, what are they telling you?
Well, they're not really telling me a whole lot, but it might take from watching the Rangers so much, and I am a huge Chris Kreider fan. I am in the same boat where I think there's even more to his game, and I think people kind of get frustrated with that sometimes because they see maybe that he could do even more than he's doing. But even as he is right now, he's, like you said, as an athlete, he's tremendously skilled. He's a great skater. He's a professional. He's a leader. I just think with this Ranger team, if you look at their season so far, they've got all these young kids. They had a tough first quarter of the season. Their schedule was terrible. I think they played like 2 games in the first 2 weeks, so they really never got any flow. Again, some of these young kids were just getting in their legs, feel comfortable. I just think for the last part of the season here, the Rangers they're playing well right now. They beat the Islanders 2 games in a row. They get the Islanders again tonight. They lost to Columbus by 1 goal. I know it's only Columbus, but Columbus is playing great. I really like the Ranger team. They get these 2 stud young goaltenders coming up. They have to figure out the Lundqvist situation. But I just think here in the last part of the season, the Rangers are going to be a real contender to make the playoffs. And I think Chris Kreider will play a big role in that both this year, and I think he'll play a big role going forward. He's the kind of guy to me that I want to have on my team. So I just think the Rangers are going to, and as they should, I think they're going to shop him around, see what they can get for him, and sit back and say, okay, listen, are we getting are we getting maybe more than we thought we were going to get? And we need these young players come along in the future and then we'll trade them. Or are they saying, listen, the offers are okay, but we'd rather keep Chris Kreider. Chris Kreider can still play for another 7-8 years. It's not like he's this old guy. So I and rightfully so, I think they will look around and see what they can get for him from all the teams in the league. But to me, if they end up keeping him, man, I like him as a player. And I think the Rangers can really make the playoffs this year, or at least make a real run for it.
We've talked in the past about my feeling that he could still be a part of their rebuild. Like he's not archaic.
Yep.
He's still we talk about how people take care of their bodies and they can play longer now. We see Zdeno Chara lasting as long as he has, Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau, and so forth. But then we don't sort of factor that in when we talk about kind of rebuilding. Yep. And so my question to you is, do you have any idea why, and I've never understood this, why Kreider is not re-signed now? Why didn't they re-sign him?
Well, it may be because, so it'd be a few factors. For me, if I'm Kreider and his agent, I want good money. I feel like I'm like you said, at least a top, on that team, top 4 forward on that team. And I think in a lot of other teams around the league, he's at least a top 6 forward. So he wants to get paid that way. I also wonder from the Rangers end, and this is just my speculation, they've got a lot of balls in there. Still, what do they do with Ryan Strome? What do they do with D'Angelo? They've got, those 2 young goaltenders. What are you going to do with Lundqvist? So there's a lot of unanswered questions. If you can get Lundqvist, and it's a touchy one with him too, because he's been such a big part of the organization and such a loyal soldier that, to me, if you could get him to agree to a trade someplace, that frees up cap space too, right? You've got these other 2 good young goaltenders that are still on entry-level deals. So, that changes your perception of what you can do with Kreider if you get rid of the Lundqvist contract. So I think, to me, that's the issue. It's just they're in that phase right now where, I don't know, maybe are they farther ahead in the rebuild than they thought they were going to be? And now this is kind of, they had a plan, and now the plan has to change a little bit because they're maybe more of a contender than they thought they were going to be. So to me, that's the Lundqvist thing is a big one. I think it's he's handled it very professionally, so it hasn't been a big big splash in the newspapers or anything. But somewhere along the line, that's got to get settled too.
Yeah, no, I can definitely kind of see that. But when you lose a player like Kreider, even a rebuilding, this is a good young team, but we say that they're in rebuild, but they got Panarin. And I don't know. I just never understood why they didn't try to re-sign him.
Sign Kreider.
Yeah. And,
Well, but again, we don't. Again, I know you know this, but we don't know what's going on behind the
no,
scenes.
I agree with that. You know, maybe he did. He maybe wants too much. Who knows what's happening?
Well, listen, maybe they've had conversations with them to say, and again, this is just speculation to say, listen, obviously, you can see what we've got here. We've got the Lundqvist situation we need to deal with. We want you here with the Rangers. We just need to iron out some other things. So let's just be patient here and let the year play out and see what happens. Right?
Well, it is all possible. With regard to the Rangers making a run for it, they're 9 points back, and there's way too many teams to climb over. Now, we saw St. Louis do what they did, but I don't know. I mean, you played in the league. This is a 31-team league.
Yep.
This is the Metropolitan Division, which is really, really strong. Even in the Atlantic, we see the Panthers as an improved team, making some noise as well. Like, what are their chances, really?
Well, it's a good point. So, but I look at the teams that are ahead of them, and I see Montreal's played 3 more games, and it's got 1 more point than the Rangers. And I just don't see Montreal as a contender, a team that is going to get better as the year goes on. See, that's what I see from the Rangers, that they're going to get better and better, because that's what they're doing right now. They're playing better and better hockey. I think they're better than Buffalo. Toronto is kind of an enigma to me. It's just like one game. They're fantastic. They've got the talent. They should be in a playoff spot right now. I think the Rangers are better than the Flyers. And then, you've got Columbus, who, listen, I totally admire what they're doing. I think Tortorella is doing a great job. But, I mean, can they continue to play? Do they have the depth to continue to play the way they can? Who knows with Tortorella? He gets a lot out of his teams. But I just look at the teams ahead of him. I say, yeah, there are a number of teams, but I just don't see any team there that I think the Rangers can't play better than going down the stretch.
Yeah, I like Philadelphia better than I like the Rangers. I mean, I'm bullish on their future. I just, I think the Flyers have sort of surprised. I mean, the Flyers have really been good at home. They're 16-4-4 at home, and they've been just sort of blah on the road.
Yeah, and to me, I just look at that team and I just don't see, again, it's the same as Columbus. You admire them, what they're doing, but are they really that good that they can continue it? See, when I look at the Rangers lineup and I think, well, not only are they that good right now, I just think they're going to get better and better because those young kids are going to get better and better. But
yeah, well, it's so funny. You look at these standings now, and sometimes you got to look closely to determine what's going on with the team. All you got to do is look at the statistics on the Maple Leafs. 176 goals they've scored, but they've given up 165. That is a lot of goals. There's nobody in front of them, I don't think, that have given up even close to that. That's not true. Florida's ahead of them, and they've given up 160. But
when you watch Toronto play, like I even say to myself, like sometimes, wow, you see all that firepower, and there's other times like, maybe I'll play tonight, maybe I won't. It doesn't seem to have changed that much with Sheldon Keefe. I think he's allowing them to be more offensive, but defensively, it's still the same issue. It's like, if I want to play defense, I will tonight. If not, I'm not going to do it.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the Columbus Blue Jackets, but I want to finish out this trade talk a little bit now because, we're getting close now that it's almost not quite a month out before the trade deadline. And, you can see it kind of heating up. And, I was looking at a few guys today and sort of, sizing them up with teams. And I think a guy that everybody is going to talk about is the Senators' Pajot, a guy that can play number 3 center and score. And you look at all the teams that are looking for depth players right now, guys that can play in their top 9. And I bet that they end up getting calls from 8 or 10 teams on him. And I saw Mark Spector had a piece for Sportsnet saying that the Oilers should go after him, that would be a good get for them, that he would be a nice fit for them. And, Spector acknowledged that he doesn't see the Oilers as a contender, but I think he feels, as I do, is that important for them to get in the playoffs. I just think when you got Connor McDavid and you got a fan base that's deprived and you're Kenny Holland, I think you got to pull out all stops. So, and I think that I agree that would be a good fit. Now, the guy that I'm really interested in also, in addition to Kreider, is Toffoli. And I think there are going to be a lot of teams interested in him as a potential 20-goal scorer playing on the wing.
Yeah.
And I got to think Colorado's going to be interested. I got to think that Edmonton will be interested, depending on what happens with Kreider. I got to believe Boston will be interested. But the team that really intrigues me as a possibility in a site are the Pittsburgh Penguins. Gunsel obviously is out for a long while into the playoffs, to be sure. And they could use more scoring. Like, they've made an impressive run this season, given all the injuries they've had, and they seem to know how to do it. But they still historically add around the trade deadline, and I think he'd be a good fit. What's your thought on that?
Well, I guess, I see your point with the injury they got, but I think to myself, like, with Getzel, like, okay, so he's going to come back some point in the playoffs. That's almost like a trade you made in the playoffs, right? They're playing great right now without him. Now all of a sudden they're going to add him to the lineup, and he's a top 3, top 6 forward on that team. So that's a big bonus. I don't know. There's a part of me, and I know Jimmy Rutherford has always made trades there in Pittsburgh to do something to help him in the playoffs, but part of me looks and says, like, that's one of those cases where I think to myself, you're playing so well. Why do you feel like you need to add more to it? And I know the depth angle to it. Like, for me, it's more, and again, I'm going to pick on a friend of ours, David Poyle, here a little bit. I think he's done this in the past with his talented teams. He feels like he needs to add even more talent. Like, I just think I go back with Washington when they won the Cup 2 years ago. They added Dominic Smith-Pelly at the end, like a fourth-line guy. Now, I think they got a little lucky with him. He played even better than they thought he was going to. But I just think, to me, I like that depth mentality. Like, to add more talent to an already talented team doesn't make that much sense. I think it's more add the depth guys there for the talented team. So I don't know, maybe Foley's a little bit too high up in the depth chart for me. Maybe more of a third or fourth line guy is what they need. But Jimmy Rutherford has done it before. So.
Yeah, and I think that Penguins team traditionally ends up, because they've got so much money tied up in, Letang and Crosby and Malkin, they end up with their top guys playing with, guys who, may not be in that role under normal circumstances. So, I think if you add like another skilled guy, you can move like Simon off of the Crosby's line, and he moves down a little bit. And a lot of times, I think the Penguins are just kind of reshuffling their lineup and trying to get people where they belong when they make these trades. So I could see Toffoli, like, even before the injuries, they could have used a guy like Toffoli. I mean, basically, this would be the argument. They traded away Phil Kessel last year, and they got back Galchenyuk, who really hasn't performed, hasn't delivered, hasn't replaced Kessel. And Toffoli might be the kind of the Kessel type player. He's not as obviously spectacular as Kessel could be when he was going well, but Toffoli could be that guy. So I don't know. I think they'll be in on him. That the problem is there are going to be so many teams that are interested, and as good a horse trader as Jim Rutherford is, and I think he's very good at it. He doesn't want to give away all of his future assets. I mean, that's the trick in the salary cap era, is you got to compete now without sacrificing your future, and that's hard because the people who you're trading with want those future assets. But anyway, let's move on. I want to talk about the Blue Jackets. I just think it's just been incredible, and I want to give you some stats here to think about. In the last 16 games, the most goals they've given up is 3, and that's only happened 4 times. So 12 games of the 16, they've given up 2 or fewer goals. In the last 5 games, they've only given up 3 goals. In that span, they're 14-4, and that's since December 16th. And at 2.5 goals per game, the Blue Jackets are number 2 in goals against average. Who's number 1? You got to guess? I don't know if you've looked at it recently.
Who's number 1? St. Louis Blues?
No, but that's a good guess. It's the Dallas Stars.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's number 1, and they're at 2.46. So they're right there. Yeah. Like this run that the Devils are on right now. Excuse me, the Devils. Where am I at? This run that the Blue Jackets are on right now is really incredible. And the reason why I want to talk about it is they're winning in the way you have to play to be successful in the playoffs.
Yes.
Like if they were winning in 5-3 and they were in some games getting 7 goals. I would say, well, it's a bit of an aberration. But they're winning because they're denying, quality chances, and they're being hard to play against. And they basically have picked up where they left off last season when they played. And I think this is sustainable. I don't know why they couldn't do this into the playoffs.
Yep. They are one of those teams. I remember when Vegas first started, when Gerard Gallant was coaching there way back when, and it was the same kind of thing. You kept looking at that lineup and saying, okay, they can't continue this run. And I think when you look at the Columbus's lineup, especially after all the players they lost from last year's team, you think to yourself, they just aren't that good. Now that's disrespectful to the players there, because obviously they're proven they are good enough. But it's just they continue to play that game, and you're right. It is sustainable because it's not some guy that's scoring goals that you don't expect to be a goal scorer. That all of a sudden, like this guy that scored 10 goals in the season his whole career, and all of a sudden he's scoring at a 40-goal pace. That's not the way they're playing. They're playing as a real team game. Listen, John Tortorella to me right now has to be not just coach of the year, but maybe coach of the decade. I just think he is proven over and over that he just gets the most out of his teams. Like again, I'll go back. He's a lot like that Herb Brooks to me, where he's selling to his team that, guys, don't listen to everybody else. We can have success here if we play this team game. And now it's starting to happen. So the players are all now buying in, saying, yeah, he's right. We can have success. Why are we going to settle for not making the playoffs just because you lost all those guys from last year? We're in the hunt for it, so let's keep it going.
Yeah, and I just think that it doesn't seem to matter who the Blue Jackets have in their lineup. They lost Korpisalo, their number 1 goalie, and Elvis Merzlikins steps in, and he's been phenomenal. They used the backup last game, and that works as well. And Elvis has really been good, but I think this is a case too of the system they have. If you plug in a goalie who plays competently.
Yep.
Just does his job. Doesn't have to be spectacular.
Totally.
They can win. I just think this is, really sort of an impressive run. And I think you got to give Kekalainen, the general manager, some credit for this too. We look back and they made the moves last year. And, it was sort of split about how people thought about it. Some people said, oh, you're mortgaging too much. I was among those that thought, I love it. Because I love aggressiveness. We play and get involved in sports because we want to win. We don't get into playing for the future, and we want to win. Everybody wants to win today. I know, when I root for my NFL teams, that's what I want. I want them to win today, so I really lauded him for that. And as it turned out, he said, we have the assets to stay competitive, and he was correct. Yep. They do, although. I guess my question is how much of it is the assets and how much of it is Tortorella? I think that's a fair question.
Yeah, and I do think it's both. I think that they knew. It appears that they knew that, okay, we're now going to give up some assets to get these great players in last year's team. But no, it seems like they also understood that, okay, we can afford to give up those assets because we have accumulated enough assets, and we have Tortorella, who gets a lot out of his teams. In fact, maybe Tortorella is better at coaching a less talented team than he is a more talented team, because he can get those guys to believe. And again, similar to Gerard Gallant in Vegas, he got those guys to believe, hey, listen, okay, we're really not that good, but we can be a good team if we play a certain way. I think both those coaches have done that, right? They can say these guys, you're kind of the cast-offs. Nobody believes in you in Columbus this year. Nobody believed in you in Vegas when you started, but we can get a lot out of the team if we all play that good team game. What's interesting too, as we talk about this, I don't know if we touched on this. We were Brian Burke made some comments the other day. At the opposite end of the scale is the San Jose Sharks in my mind, as opposed to a team that believes that they can do something. The San Jose Sharks appear like they've kind of folded in the tent already. I guess Erik Karlsson made some comments, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was kind of commenting that, the season's pretty much over for us. We're just, going to ride it out. And Brian Burke got on him. I think it was on Hockey Night Canada, got on him, and rightfully so, was pretty hard on him, saying like, are you kidding me? Like you're quitting now? So it's interesting, right? Here's this super talented team, I think, in San Jose, who appears to kind of mailed it in already. And here's this less talented team in Columbus, who is doing everything they can to fight and scratch and claw to make it in the playoffs, is what San Jose should be doing. But Columbus is the team that's doing it. So,
yeah, looking at those Sharks right now. The Sharks are 21, 25, and 4. It's not like they've been, Los Angeles bad or Detroit bad. But they've just given up 167 goals, and they're having trouble scoring. They're a minus 37 goal differential. So, could they dig out? What's killing them is their road record at 8 and 14 and 3.
They don't look like they even care anymore. It just looks like they've just
that
they've mailed it in, which is.
Yeah, I think they're probably headed for a rebuild. But the one team that I think that is first in line for a rebuild in my mind is the Anaheim Ducks. I think it might be overdue. I think that, and I know they've tried to make some changes. Obviously, they moved out Corey Perry, but they may have. I think what has happened is they have a great goaltender in John Gibson, and I think that it sort of fooled them into believing they could sort of stay competitive. But don't you think they need to start?
Yeah, I think Getzlaf is a fantastic player, but maybe you approach with him that you keep him because he's like that Patrice Bergeron in Boston. He's that professional guy you want to have around for the young guys. But yeah, they need to start. The other team for me too is the Minnesota Wild. I just think that we talked about this before. For some reason that mix there, it just doesn't seem to. They tease you a little bit. They play better for a while. They win some games, then all of a sudden they go revert back. And when you watch them play, it just seems like it's one of those teams. It's just just doesn't seem to all be there for them. So, but you're not wrong in Anaheim. But I would put Minnesota on that list. Yeah,
well, that's your pick's Minnesota, mine's Anaheim. I don't know that there's any right or wrong in there. It's just a sort of a gut feeling.
Yeah.
Speaking of teams though, and you and I talk all the time about plus minus, and goal differential isn't plus minus, but it is. But, I look at a team like the Red Wings, and it's one thing to be in rebuilding mode and bottom out, but they are a minus 88 in goal differential. Like, that's 2 goals per game almost different than I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah,
I find that stat to be staggering.
Yeah.
Absolutely staggering, like a minus 88. And, by comparison, let's look at some of the other poor teams in the league.
47 for New Jersey.
Minus 47. And LA, I think, is minus 33. Yeah. Anaheim is minus 28.
Yeah.
San Jose is minus 37. Yeah. Minnesota is minus 12. And, the Red Wings are minus 88. Now, there's a reason for that, obviously. And that is there's 2 reasons. Number one, their defense they decided to use some younger players, and the veterans really aren't very good. And then there was injuries, and I think Yzerman could have plugged the holes by going out and getting some veterans. But I think he just said, "Well, let's let the natural course progress," and he just kind of let it. I wonder if Holland had been the GM, he would have tried to, correct it early, because you probably had an opportunity in the first month of the season to maybe go out and get a couple veterans and just say, look, we're going to try to play safe hockey back here and try to keep the puck out. But the other thing is Jimmy Howard, who has played very, very well, I would say over the last couple of seasons, just has not been good, is just the best way to put it. And Bernier has been good recently, but now he's hurt. But wasn't good at the start of the year, and they haven't had quality goaltending, as well. But let's talk about a couple other things too.
Who's going to get fired next as a coach? Is that one of our?
Yeah, that's one we're going to talk about next. And what's interesting about that is we've had all these firings, and it really is cyclical. We go for a couple of years where hardly anybody gets fired, and if you look at it, I think there's some logic to it, because usually when no one gets fired is when we've had a bunch of coaching changes. So, the teams that changed this year, they're not likely to change again next year, So you could almost predict that we may not have a lot of changes next year. So that's kind of why it happens. But I wonder if it could happen again this year. And I think, yes, I've got a name, but what's your thought?
Oh, you got a name. You're going to hide that. Well, I don't even know if you're going to consider this one a firing because the coaches already got fired there. But I look at Calgary. and they're right there about staying in the playoffs, and I like that team a lot. See, to me, is one of the keys is the available coaches out there too, right? I mean, it's nice to say you need to make a coaching change, but who are you going to hire? I'm sure people are going to mention Mike Babcock. To me, I'm sure somebody's going to hire Mike Babcock, but until Mike Babcock has shown to me that he has changed his ways, I don't see him getting back in the National Hockey League in my mind. But again, I do think somebody will hire him. The guy, though, that obviously I think is a fantastic coach is Gerard Gallant. So I'm saying to myself, okay, so if you really believe that Gerard Gallant is that great, and I think he is, what team could he go to right now to kind of give him that last little push to make sure they make the playoffs? To me, that's Calgary. I think Calgary is a good enough hockey team. They should be playing better. They're in the hunt there right now, and it's they've got that interim coach there. But I think so it's now easier to just kind of plug in Gerard Gallant. That's the move that I would make. And again, not because the team is playing that bad. It's more because is it who's it coaching there? Jeff Ward is coaching. It's taken over from Bill Peters. So I think they're doing okay, but I just think Gerard Gallant, based on what I think of him and what his track record is, can now push you to the next level. So I'm going to pick Calgary.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Montreal Canadiens, Claude Julien. I don't know that he's in trouble, but that team and with the pressure he's under there, and the expectations are so high that I just think you're always in trouble when you're in Montreal.
So who's going to go into Montreal?
I don't know. Does Gerard Gallant speak French? I think he does.
From the Maritime province, he might speak a little French. I'm not sure, but
yeah, no. I mean, it's a fair question, and like I said, it's not based on any inside information.
Yeah.
I just know that they expect a lot out of Montreal, and they're not delivering obviously this year.
Yeah.
And
but
they're
Bergevin, though, who do you fire to bring in? Who's there before him? You fired somebody.
Before Julien.
I'm trying to think who it was.
Good gosh.
Who it was? It
all blends in, yeah.
No. But he was just he's assistant Pittsburgh now, I believe, right? Right. So now if you're the general manager, Mark Bergevin, and I guess it's happened before, other general managers have done, but now you're firing another coach. At some point, I mean, it's got to turn back to the general manager and say, like, okay, first of all, you just don't have good enough players, and second of all, why do we keep hiring the wrong coach then, right?
But before we wrap up, let me ask you this though: is there any general managers that could be in trouble? I've got one that I would throw out there.
Doug Wilson for sure, and I think Doug Wilson is a former player, but man, that you go ahead and sign Erik Karlsson to that big contract, and now all of a sudden your team can't. And the problem is that now they fired the coach, and now they're trying to say that it's more of a grinding out team. You signed Erik Karlsson, and now you want to have a grinding out team. That just doesn't go together. So I'd say Doug Wilson's gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, I wonder about Bob Murray. I mean, I know that Sam Marlies have like him, and he's been there a long time, and I like him. Yeah. But this team just seems stale, and there doesn't seem to be. I don't feel like I understand the direction the Ducks are going in.
I agree.
So I got to believe there might be at least some review, if not in season, then certainly after the season. And now, Ray Shero is sitting out there. Ray Shero, when you bring him in for an interview, is going to be pretty impressive. So, I mean, and I know he's, been twice fired now, but, he still has those, he's got the Penguin Cup on his resume. And, I think people still find that he's a pretty intelligent, cerebral general manager. So, anyway, that's going to be it for today on the Laidlaw and Allen Report. I'm Alan. He's Laidlaw. We'll be back later.
Talk to you next week, guys.